Hi Booktube, it's Amy. I'm back again reading from Holbrook Jackson's Anatomy of Bibliomania, beginning on page 147 of The Sorts in Ancient and Modern Times. Give me but a little leave, and I will set before your eyes a fair number of examples common to the ancients, and those nearer our own times, which go farther to prove how men have resorted to books for purposes of divination. One, which may will recall, recounts what befell during the visit of King Charles I to the Bodleian in 1642, and is given by Macrae, from Annals of the Bodleian, according to that footnote. And it's out of Wellwood's Memoirs. The king, being at Oxford during the Civil Wars, went one day to see the public library, where he was shown, among other books, a Virgil, nobly printed and exquisitely bound. The Lord Falkland, to divert the king, would have his majesty make a trial of his fortune by the sorts Virgilianae, which everybody knows, and I have shown, and was a usual kind of augury some past ages. Whereupon the king, opening the book, the period which happened to come up was that part of Dido's imprecation against Aeneas. At bello, and we won't read the Latin there, we will just read the English here. Yet let a race untamed and haughty foes his peaceful entrance with dire arts oppose, oppressed with numbers of the unequal field, his men discouraged and himself expelled. Let him for succour sue from place to place, torn from his subjects and his sons' embrace. First, let him see his friends in battle slain, and let their untimely fate lament in vain. And when at length the cruel war shall cease, on hard conditions may he buy his peace. Nor let him then enjoy supreme command, but fall untimely by some hostile hand, and lie unburied in the common sand. From Dryden's translation of the Aeneid. It is said King Charles seemed concerned at this accident, and that the Lord Falkland, observing it, would otherwise try his own fortunes in the same manner, hoping he might fall upon some passage that could have no relation to his case, and thereby divert the king's thoughts from any impression the other might have made upon him. But the place that Falkland stumbled upon was yet more suited to his own destiny than the other had been to the king's, for it contained the exclamations of Evander upon the untimely death of his son Pallas. O Pallas, thou hast failed thy plighted word, to fight with reason, not to tempt the sword. I warned thee, but in vain, for well I knew what perils youthful ardor would pursue, that boiling blood would carry thee too far, young as thou wert in dangers, raw to war. O cursed essay of arms, disastrous doom, prelude of bloody fields and fights to come. Also from Dryden's translation of the Aeneid. No copy of Virgil, says Macrae, answering the description of this volume is now in the Bodleian, and Archbishop Bancroft, in one of his manuscripts notebooks in the Bodleian Library, assigns Windsor as the locale of the story. There goes a story that Charles I, a little before the rebellion, being at Windsor, the company agreed to take their lots out of Virgil. The king's was this: At bello audaces popule vextis et armis, etc. A third report, vouched for by Aubrey, the gossip monger, would have that the casting took place at Paris, and the Prince of Wales, not the king, was chief party to it. So much for history, but it is all one, whether king or prince, Oxford, Windsor, or Paris. For all these cities, all three cities, and many princes have resorted to Virgil, Homer, etc., when their destinies were at stake, as those of more humble station in most ages, like Robert Herrick in the Ebb Tide, would roam about his South Sea island with Virgil, his only companion. He would dip into the Aeneid, seeking sorts, and if the oracle, as it was the way of the oracles, replied with no very certain or encouraging voice, visions of England at least would throng upon the exile's memory. The busy schoolroom, the green playing fields, holidays at home, and the perpetual roar of London and the fireside, and the white head of his father. For it is the destiny of those grave, restrained, and classic writers with whom we make enforced and often painful acquaintance at school, to pass into the blood and become native in the memory, so that a phrase of Virgil speaks not so much of Mantua or Augustus, but of English places and the student's own irrevocable youth. In like manner, as may be imagined, the Bible has been the medium of prophecy for many good men, notably St. Augustine, for when he was a young man in some distress of spirit, not knowing which way to turn for comfort, he heard a mysterious voice say unto him, "Take up and read, take up and read." After a while, finding no human origin for this command, he presumed it came from God, and gat him to the Apostles' book in the presence of his friend Elpius, where he opened and read, "Not in rioting and drunkenness, not in chambering and wantonness, not in strife and envying, but put ye on the Lord Jesus Christ, and make not provision of the flesh, to fulfill the lusts thereof." No farther would he read, nor needed he. For instantly, even with the end of the sentence, by a light as if it were of confidence now, darted into my heart, all the darkness of doubting now vanished away. He then shut up the book and discovered all this unto Appius, who confessed that a like revelation was wrought in his own heart, and he requested to see what Augustine had read, and looked farther, and found these words following him. "Him that is weak in faith receive," which he applied to himself, and with it was strengthened. This reading established the saintliness of Augustine, for he sought no more after a wife, nor any other hope in this world. Of the Homeric and Virgilian lotteries, several instances from classical times are given by Pantagruel. Many have thus hit upon their destinies, as is testified in the person of Socrates, who, whilst he was in prison, hearing in a dream the recitation by a beautiful woman of this verse of Homer, said of Achilles in the 9th of the Iliad, "The third day I at Thea might arrive, whereby foresaw that on the third subsequent day he was to die. Of the truth whereof he assured Crito, as Plato in Cicero in Primo de Divination, Diogenes, Laertius, and others, to have to the full recorded. The like is also witnessed by Opilius Marcinus, to whom, being desirous to know if he should be the Roman emperor, befell by chance of lot this sentence in the 8th of the Iliad. Dotard new warriors, urge thee, be gone. Thy life decays, and old age weighs thee down." In fact, he being somewhat ancient, had hardly enjoyed the sovereignty of the empire for the space of 14 months, when by Heliogabalus, then both young and strong, he was dispossessed thereof, thrust out of all, and killed. Brutus bears witness to another experiment of this nature. He was willing, through his exploratory way of lot, to learn what the event and issue should be of the Pharsalian battle, wherein he perished, and casually encountered on this verse, said of Patroclus in the 16th of the Iliad, "Fate and Latona's son have shot me dead." Accordingly, Apollo was the field word in the dreadful day of that fight. Diverse notable things of old have likewise been foretold and known by casting of Virgilian lots. In matters of no less importance than the obtaining of the Roman Empire, as it happened to Alexander Severus, who, trying his fortune at the said kind of lottery, did hit upon this verse written in the 6th of the Aeneid, "Know, Roman, that thy business is to reign." Within very few years thereafter, he was effectually and in good earnest created and installed Roman emperor. A semblable story thereto is related to Adrian, who, being hugely perplexed within himself, out of a longing humor to know on what account he was the emperor of Trajan, and how large the measure of that affection was which he did bear unto him, had recourse, after the manner above specified, to the Maorian lottery, which by haphazard tendered him these lines out of the 6th of the Aeneid. "But who is he, conspicuous from afar, with olive boughs, that doth his offerings bear? By the white hair and beard I know him plain, the Roman king." Shortly thereafter was he adopted by Trajan, and succeeded to him in the empire. Moreover, to the lot of the Emperor Claudius befell this line of Virgil, written in the 1st of his Aeneid, "Whilst the 3rd summer saw him reign a king in Latium." In effect, he did not reign above 2 years. To that said Claudian also, inquiring concerning his brother Quintilius, whom he proposed as a colleague with himself in the empire, happened the response following in the 6th of the Aeneid. Whom fate just let us see, and whom no longer suffer him to be. And so it fell out, for he was killed on the 17th day, after he had attained unto the management of the imperial charge. The very same lot also, with the like misluck, did betide the Emperor Gordian, the younger, to Claudius Albinus, being very solicitous to understand somewhat of his future adventures, did occur this saying, which is written in the 6th of the Aeneid. The Romans, boiling with tumultuous rage, this warrior shall the dangerous storm assuage. With victories he and the Carthaginian mauls, and with strong hand shall crush the rebel Gauls. Likewise, when the Emperor D. Claudius, Aurelian's predecessor, did with great eagerness research after the fate to come of his posterity, his hap was to alight on this verse in the 1st of the Aeneid. No bounds are to be set, no limits here, which was fulfilled by the goodly genealogical row of his race, when Peter Amy, the friend of Rabelais, did in like manner explore and make trial, if he should escape the ambush of the hobgoblins who lay in wait, all to bemaul him, he fell upon this verse in the 3rd of the Aeneid. Ah, flee the bloody land, the wicked shore. Which counsel he obeying forthwith avoided all their ambuscades. Were it not well to shun prolixity, I would or could enumerate 100 such little adventures, which, conformable to the dictate and verdict of the verse, have by that manner of lot casting befallen the curious researchers of them. Do not you nevertheless imagine, lest you should be deluded, that I would upon this kind of fortune-telling infer an uncontrollable and not to be gainsaid infallibility of truth. I say no more than that, as it has comforted men in all ages since the birth of books. Among our own people and others, pricking the Bible for luck or prophecy has been an old wives' custom this long time. And among those who go down to the sea in ships and seek business in great waters, the sorts are still consulted out of any handy volume. One such instance has been given me by a sailor from his own observation, in which the crew of a ship, casting lots for treatment all round to strong drink, by stabbing the pages of a book with a knife, the one cutting at an agreed letter nearest the first, A, on the left-hand page, paying for the drinks. The latest recourse to the sorts I can find in time present is recorded of Mr. Stanley Baldwin when Prime Minister. We have a footnote here saying, from speech at the dinner on the completion of the New English Dictionary, Goldsmiths Hall. And we've got a 1928 publication date for that reference. But Mr. Stanley Baldwin, when Prime Minister, he confessed to having himself used the Oxford Dictionary for this purpose, finding in it much enlightenment on cabinets and politics, as where cabinet councils are defined as a remedy worse than the disease. But after events proved the inefficacy of this form of prophecy, when the dictionary told him that girls are naturally timid, prone to dependence, but born conservatives, for at the next election the Conservative Party was given its quietus, if all I read be true, by the girls he himself had enfranchised, who were so bold and independent as to vote for the revolutionaries. I have thus far digressed, and may certainly conclude my account of this strange conceit or superstition by declaring it astrum hominis, and if books are thus made the rudder of our ship, which most argue reasons should steer, it is no more than a farther tribute to the immemorial tradition of their power, the medium deferens of that faith by whose means they have worked and produced prodigious effects. As such fantasies are more or less intended or remitted, and their humors dispossessed, so does the soul of man move, more or less, and take deeper impression of life and time. And that brings us to the end of that section. And the Prime Minister, using the Oxford Dictionary to tell him prophecies, brings to mind a Canadian Prime Minister back in the 1930s who apparently sought the advice of fortune tellers and crystal balls. But moving on here, our next section here will be of the bibliophagi, or book eaters. So moving back into something more book proper and away from divination. But we will end it here for today.